Hello.
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 Welcome, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
How are you
Hello.
doing?
Hi. Hello.
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 Wow, it's
Wow, yeah. Long time.
good.
Long Corona time.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Long Corona time.
Good. So welcome everyone. It's a pleasure for me to introduce this webinar series to keep learning about the Virtual Events Toolkit.
Hello.
My name is Elena Zíñiguez de Heredia, and I will be the webinar coordinator managing the production behind the scenes. This webinar series will focus on the practical applications of the Virtual Events Toolkit, an online module available on the ISU Learning platform that aims to help everyone interested in organizing a virtual event for educational and development purposes. This webinar series will cover each section of the toolkit in a dynamic and engaging way, and real examples of the final product will be demonstrated for each type of virtual event. For those of us in Zoom, I remind you to please keep your cameras on and your microphones off at all times. If you have any questions during the presentation, please leave them in the chat so we can monitor them. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end where you will be able to ask anything else by raising your hand using the Zoom reactions. And for those watching on YouTube, please leave your questions in the live chat and we will try to answer them at the end. I just want to thank you once again for being here today, and I hope you enjoy our webinar. So let's start by welcoming our host for today, and it is my honor to leave you with Beth Crane.
Thanks very much, Elena. It's great to see everyone today. Today's webinar is, we're going to talk about the first section of the toolkit, which is how to host virtual meetings or webinars. During this past year, I know we've all had many virtual meetings, and these meetings, virtual meetings, aren't meant to replace face-to-face or in-person meetings, but rather to enhance and expand opportunities going forward. So this year, I've made a lot of connections and met people from around the skating world through virtual meetings and events. At my first virtual event that I went to, I was aware that there was somebody behind the scenes that I couldn't see who was managing the event, and I knew I needed to meet this person. So this person ended up being Elena, who you just all met. And Elena is from Argentina and living in Peru. And I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have met Elena and made the connection if we hadn't met virtually. So the opportunities for building community around the world are definitely enhanced through virtual opportunities. So today we're going to start with the simplest type of virtual event so that you can learn the basics first, and then keep building from there to more complex virtual activities. So the meeting is really the basis, and then we build and add on other parts of the toolkit from there. So the guidelines explained on the toolkit will cover the technical features of this type of virtual event. But today we're going to learn a little bit more about the educational aspects of hosting webinars while experiencing the toolkit in use. So I would like to now introduce our presenter for today, Sandra Williamson-Leadley. Sandra is an ISU officials in singles, pairs, and synchro. Sandra was one of the toolkit developers, and she was responsible for mounting and designing the format of the toolkit on the ISU website. In her professional life, Sandra is a senior lecturer at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. She's an online learning designer, instructional designer. Some of her areas of research interest are teachers and students' use of information and communication technology, professional learning and development of teachers, as well as teachers' use of information and technology in their classroom practice. So Sandra brings to us her knowledge of online teaching and learning, as well as her knowledge as an ISU official. So welcome, Sandra.
Thanks, Beth, and thanks everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time zone that you're in. And let's get started. So what I want to do is I'm going to take you through a series of slides, and we will make these slides available to you after the webinar. But going over, when you're giving your webinar, you always want to give an overview of a session, and this serves two purposes. It gives everybody a shared understanding of what you're going to be talking about during your webinar, and it also gives everybody an opportunity to get used to the presenter and how they speak. We all don't think we have an accent until we go somewhere else, but it just gives everybody a chance to listen to your voice and be able to pick up on how you say words, etc. And it just makes it a lot easier for them to be able to follow you. So today we're just going to go through the purpose of the session. I'm going to take you through some introductions and what we call netiquette, so online etiquette. We'll take you through some please do's and please don'ts. We'll talk about setting up your slides for a webinar. We'll talk about giving demonstrations, and we'll talk about flipped sessions and a little bit more about that. We want to keep our sessions short and sharp, but if we do have to have longer sessions, we want to keep them interesting, and we'll talk about what we can do with that. We'll talk about some of the interactive possibilities so you can keep your audience engaged. And then we'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions at the end. And as well, we'll have some questions going on through the chat, and those will be monitored. So if you do have questions, just put it into the chat and we will answer your questions. So the purpose of the session, you want to make sure that even though it might be that you're getting together to talk about program components, or you're doing a singles and pairs seminar, etc., you want to make sure that everybody clearly understands what the purpose of the learning intention of the session are. What are they wanting to get out of it? What are you wanting them to get out of your presentation? Outline how the sessions will run. So think about the length of the sessions, and we'll talk a little bit more about how long sessions should be. Think about breaks. Particularly on Zoom, you're staring at one place for a very long time. So not only do your participants need a break, but also you as a facilitator. Because normally when you're in face-to-face, you can be scanning around the room, your eyes get a break. But when you're talking on Zoom, you're focused in one place for the whole time. Think about the materials that are needed for your presentation or your webinar. So if you have things that you want your audience to read ahead of time, you'll need to make sure that that goes out, a list of that goes out with your invitation and your reminder. Another good place to have that is right at the beginning of your webinar, just to have a list of, make sure you have these items with you or these documents with you, because we'll be referring to them during the webinar. Set your expectations. So as Elena said at the beginning, you want to make sure that everybody has their camera on, because people can have it so that just their name is up there, so you have no idea if they're participating or not, or if they're even there. They might have just put their camera on and then turned it off, have their name there, and they haven't been at any of the session. And also you want to have it so that everybody's microphone is off, because lots of noise comes through and it's quite distracting for people. So you want to make sure that you have those expectations set. And the other thing that I always say when I'm doing is it's an audience participation. If I'm doing a webinar where there is going to be interactive activities, that I expect the audience to participate, that they're not just sitting there being sponges taking everything in. Otherwise, that makes it a very long session for the facilitator. So introductions, and we're going to have an experience of this. So talking about introductions, the size of the group does matter. So if you have up to about 15 people, you can just have them introduce themselves in the main room. But if you have more than that, and up to probably about 50, you're going to have them introduce themselves by putting them into breakout rooms. If you have quite a large group, and you're going to have a longer session, I would just put them into breakout rooms throughout the sessions and give them, put them in different rooms at different times so they get a chance to meet everybody. And I know that most of you know each other, but it's been a long time since we've seen each other face to face. So what we'd like to do right now is Elena's going to put you into breakout rooms and give you a chance to say hello to everybody, because I know everybody's itching to talk to their friends and say hello. And so we're going to give you about 2 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then we'll pull you back into the main room. So Elena, would you like to put everybody in their breakout rooms, please?
Good. So you have received a notification to join the breakout rooms, and you will be pulled back in 2 minutes.
Okay, so for those people that are joining us on the live stream, so what we've done is we have put people out into separate rooms. So there's about 5 or 6 people in each room, and they'll get an opportunity to have a talk. It's just like going off into separate meeting rooms. So we don't hear the chat in each of the rooms. And then after a certain time, and we've given them 2 minutes, then they'll come back into the main room. Now we can use those chat rooms for many different things. Beth, got some ideas on that one?
Yeah, we've used the breakout rooms in a couple of different ways this year. One, we had a skater monitoring session. So we had skaters from various parts of the world who were performing elements. And then after they finished, they came off the ice and they joined our Zoom meeting. And then we created different breakout rooms where the skaters and the coach went to the breakout room. And then there was a controller, a referee, and some judges who were giving them private feedback. And we had a schedule set up. So sometimes the various skaters rotated in and out of the different breakout rooms. So it was multiple breakout rooms, but it was private, so they could get feedback. And there's going to be a little bit more about that on session 6. We'll discuss monitoring sessions when we do our virtual live events. Another way we used it this year was for technical panel practice sessions. So we had the teams go into different breakout rooms, and we practiced technical panel calling using videos. And I think there were about 5 teams that we had with about 5 different breakout rooms. Another way we used it was actually in conjunction with technical panel practice sessions we had that if you requested it, you could get feedback yourself on the process, what you did well, what you think you could improve upon. And you went off into a breakout room to get that feedback from someone who had been listening to you. And that worked really well. We did that with experienced technical panel members as well as brand new technical panel members. And that's going to be on session 3. You'll hear a little bit more about technical panel practice sessions. Another way we used it was on trial judging. So we had a live virtual event, and we had a breakout room for trial judges so they could do their trial judging and have some discussions during the event in their own breakout room. So those were a couple of ways we used it this year. And I'm not sure, Sandra, have you used it in any other ways, either in your classroom or some other way? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, pretty much that's how we use it all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone has any other ideas, we would certainly welcome hearing what other ideas you have and how we can use breakout rooms. So are we nearly up with our 2 minutes? Okay, maybe I should remind people to go on mute again if they haven't. So yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Okay, well, I hope everybody was able to have a quick chat, a quick catch up with people I haven't seen for quite some time. Okay, so going on now, we'll just talk about some please do's and please don'ts. So what we want to do in webinars is we're not just recreating what we do face to face. You have to actually think about how you're going to engage your audience, because it's a little bit different because you're not able to walk in amongst them, and you need to be able to think about how you're going to keep your audience with you with it. Outline, as I said before, how the sessions will run. So think about the length of them, and you can have it so that you can have a little bit longer sessions if you have, pardon me, interactive activities sprinkled in amongst it. Again, that list of materials that they will need, so whether it's rule books or communications or whatever, or if you have something for them to read ahead of time, that it's all sent out. And audience participation, as I said before, you want to engage and have your participants at the center of what you do. So depending on what sort of session you're running, if it's just an information presenting session, it's a little bit different than if you want to have some interactive activities, or you're going to do some practical activities. And accountability. So one of the ways that we do use breakout rooms is that we might go out and have a small discussion about things, and then we have somebody report back from that group to the main group. This way we can share what the thoughts are, get different perspectives, but also we kind of come to a consensus before we report back to everybody else. Okay, so one of the big things is setting up your slides. And this is where we really want to put the bulk of our effort into when we're setting up our webinars. One of the handouts that we have is Death by PowerPoint. And I want to draw your attention to some of the things that it says on it. Is about making sure that you don't send out your slides ahead of time. Now, that is debatable, and some people like that. If it's just for information that you're going to be presenting, then you can send it out, because then people can add their own notes to it. If you are going to have it so that there's going to be quite a bit of interaction, I wouldn't send them out ahead of time, because people are simply looking ahead as to what's coming up. You always want to think about your content first. So don't worry about the font, don't worry about the colors, etc. Get your content done, and then you can worry about making it look pretty. And one of the things I will say, I must congratulate the ISU on their new template. The new template is nice and clean and really reflects on how the trend is for setting up slideshows. So they have the branding on the left-hand side, and then they have a nice clean screen, which works really well with dark writing. It is so much better than the old black and blue one, where people were really tempted to use lots of different colors just to be able to make things stand out. This way you can make things stand out very easily. So color and font and style and size does matter. You can see on the image that I've provided that it does make a big difference of what colors you use, and I strongly urge you not to get carried away with colors. It might look really pretty, but if you're using things like red writing on black, it doesn't work, because colorblind people can't read that. And lots of colors, yellow is really bad for being able to read easily. So you want to really think about it. And I strongly suggest also that you try it out before you actually present it to a group, so that if you're finding it difficult to read, then other people will as well. Think about the amount of text that you have on a page. Less is more. So have your keywords, you might just have some references to some rules, or that people can go away and have a look at those things. please don't read from your slides. Okay, that's probably the biggest message I can give is there's nothing worse than sitting there watching somebody read through their slides, and it's stuff that you have either read to prepare. If we think about when we go to Frankfurt seminars, etc., or if we're going to a judges or official seminar, we've read the materials that they've asked us to read. We're prepared. We've already read that stuff. It's a matter of going over and being able to discuss it so that we have a shared understanding when we come away from there. Also think about the number of images. There's some fantastic images and you don't have to make up your own. There's lots of freely available ones, but just watch that you don't get carried away. 1 or 2 is fine for doing a PowerPoint, excuse me. Okay, we talked before about a flipped session, and what a flipped session is not having to do everything while you're at the actual webinar. So you might get people to do some reading ahead of time. And so think about what you can do ahead of time and what can be done at the actual session. So it might be that they're watching, you're going to get them to watch some video clips, they might make some notes, they might read the communications, etc. And the other thing that you want to do is if you have assigned those sorts of things, you always go on the assumption, and this is one thing I do tell my students, I'm going on the assumption that you have done the work, that the preparation work that I've asked you to do. And if people haven't, they will soon quickly get caught up with the rest of the people in the breakout rooms, etc. But you don't want to have to then go back over everything because probably 80% of your or 90% of your people have done the work. So you don't want to be disengaging them from what's going on. So you also want to make sure that when you send out your invitation to your webinar, that you make that very clear that this work needs to be done ahead of time and what's going to be done with that work when you get there. And do make sure that if they have given them some prep work to do, that you do something with it in your webinar. So again, as I said before, like the Frankfurt seminar, we're expected to come already knowing, having read all the new communications. We might have some changes to some things, we might have some discussions, but the bulk of the work is already done, and then we can have those robust discussions. Okay. You might also set up some tasks to be done beforehand. And one of the things that was done this year with the Synchro Committee was that they sent out some videos for some online evaluations to be done. So the videos were sent out ahead of time. The technical panels had a look at them and then made their notes, etc. And then we came together and discussed them. So that sort of setup work meant that when we were actually together in Zoom, we were taking a maximum of an hour to go through everything, rather than spending the time looking at the videos while we were all together. Use of Google Docs or other online co-authoring software. This way we can do some collaborative work, and you can put notes, you can post questions, you could have scenarios, and give people some things to think about. So you might have different, for technical panels, for etc. You might have it so that you have a team does this, this, and this, and what would it be? Okay, they didn't do this well, they didn't do that well. So different scenarios. And also, if you're going to use online quizzes, please make sure that you go through the quiz so that people are not left wondering what the answer was or thinking that they had the answer right and they didn't. If you set a pass mark of 80%, that means that somebody goes away with 20% of it being incorrect. And this is a problem because those are the things they're going to think. They don't know what they've done wrong or got wrong, and they need to know everything that they did get incorrect has been corrected. And those are the things that they can go, oh, okay, obviously need to go and work a little bit harder on this section, do a little bit more reading and a little bit more work here. Okay, as far as demonstrations are concerned, this is really drawing on things that coaches do all the time. So the whole part whole method. So a really good example of this is how the Ice Dance Technical Committee present the pattern dances. So in the videos, we see the whole dance being done. and then we see parts of the dance being done and being spoken through those, and then they put it back together with the whole dance again. This way they can really highlight where the areas that we need to be paying attention are, particularly for key points. And it gives a really good, strong message about what we need to be looking for. Show and tell is a little bit different than that. And one of the examples that we've seen is that in a pairs program doing a lift. So we had Jamie McGregor doing a pairs lift. He showed it in real time. He then slowed it down and took us through each section of it. And then he did it in real time again and called it as he would at a competition. This way we can look at various aspects of it, break it down, and then put it back together again. And demonstrations of different parts. So we might look at just the entry or the exit of something. We might look at, particularly in pairs, we might look at just the catch. So we can take apart those elements and look at particular parts of it. It just makes it so, on video, it's much easier to do. One of the things that we have found is that video lags, particularly if it's across time zones. And one of the methods that has been used quite successfully is having everybody have a link to the video, and then having everybody have the video on their own machine, and then simply going 3, 2, 1, play, and everybody plays the video on mute to themselves, and then they can talk about it because they all see it at basically the same time. And we don't have that problem with the lagging. So that's worked really successfully as well. Okay, I'm just going to pause there for a moment. Any questions that we need to address, Beth or Sally?
There was one that we wanted to ask, and that was, you mentioned different platforms and applications. So how do you check if the participants can use the platforms that you're going to use during your webinar? So you don't want to get on there and find out, oh, I can't see it, I can't read it, I can't hear it. So how do you check for those things? That was the question.
Yeah. Again, this is part of your prep beforehand. So even if you're going to use something that's not the norm, then first of all, they need to make sure they have Zoom, if that's what you're going to be using as your main platform. But if you're going to be using other things, to make sure that they have the links to it, and that they tried out beforehand. You want to come to the webinar well prepared, and you know that you have everything. Of course, there's always technical hitches, and it's a matter of just trying things out and making sure they work as best as possible. We've had our own technical hitches where we've had to drop out and come back in, and usually it's very quick, but that would be the best possible situation. I would say is make sure you try things out before, and not to use things that are too obscure that people will find it very difficult. If there's going to be lots of instructions with it, I would think twice about using it. You want things that are pretty intuitive and user-friendly.
Okay, there was one other comment that came in over the chat, and I'm not sure everyone could hear me when they were coming out of the breakout room. So I was just discussing some ways that we've used breakout rooms this year. And one was for skater monitoring sessions. Another one was technical panel practice sessions, and also trial judging. And we will cover each of those in some of our follow-up sessions. And do you have time for one more now, Sandra?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are the videos being played live? And what do you do when you encounter lag or choppy videos?
Yeah, so this is where we've used, I know that different technical communities have used Dropbox to share the videos or send out the links ahead of time. And so that everybody are able to access the links on their own computer. And like I said, having them queued up so that you just go 3, 2, 1, and everybody pushes play at the same time. as long as everybody's on mute, then the sound doesn't bother anybody else. And even if it's 1 second out, at least you're all basically going to be finished at the same time. So it'll take about the same time period, but it's as close to getting a replay as possible, or to see something as in real time as possible. But that tends to be the best way to get rid of the lagging of the videos.
And maybe I can add one more comment, because I know this has happened to many of us, the lagging or the choppy video. And it might be that you try different browsers, because some browsers work more effectively than others. And I know right in the middle of a competition, someone suggested I change browsers, and I did. And all of a sudden, my video was very clear. So I think you would want to try your different browsers and see which works best for you. Okay, thanks.
Great. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'd like to talk about this type of sessions and how long they should be. At university, we go on the short and sharp at 50 minutes maximum. By that time, basically the research tells us that people have an attention span of about 20 minutes. So as long as you can have some sort of activity in there, like I said, it's a little bit different being in face-to-face, because you can look around and have that break from staring at the screen. But when you're on Zoom, you're focused in one place. It's great because you can see all your participants at once, but it does get hard on the eyes after a while. So try and keep it to about 50 minutes and then have a break. Or have an interactive activity. If you have interactive activities, you can extend it out a little bit more, but do give people time to walk away from their computer and either have a coffee break or lunch or whatever, so that you also need to have that time just to be refreshed. Otherwise, by the end of it, your eyes are going to be pretty sore. The type of session, again, depends on what the purpose of your session is. So is it simply delivery of information? So it might be that we're talking about the new rules for this season, and we just need everybody to know what those are. We might be doing some training, and some of the other webinars that are going to be presented later on in the series, we'll talk about that. And it might be giving some practical experiences, as I talked about with some of the work that we've done with the Synchro Committee. If you're going to have longer sessions, and that is possible, because we're used to going to, let's say, judges seminars where we are there from 9 till 5. So we're not going to be able to do that via Zoom. So if we're going to have longer sessions, we do what we call chunking, and that is to break them up into parts, so that you really think about your schedule and how long things are going to be, and where you're going to put your interactive activities, where you're going to put them into breakout rooms, so that everybody gets an opportunity to feel like they're moving around and to have a break from just having information at them, and also to be able to have some discussion. And that makes it feel like it's not just quite so intense. We can also have what we call hybrid sessions. And this is a mix of remote and in-person sessions, as it says there. So we've done quite a bit. Obviously in New Zealand, we're a bit remote from the rest of the world. So, and we have complete travel restrictions. So we've been having remote coaches, international coaches and international officials do presentations for us or seminars. And we've had them give a mix of giving information, but we've also had them use local coaches or officials to be able to supplement what they're doing. So it might be that our remote presenter presents for, let's say, 50 minutes or a couple 50-minute sessions, and then we have everybody else face-to-face. In New Zealand, we have no restrictions, so we can gather as a group face-to-face and do work all together. So we can use the best of both worlds with that one. So if you have that mix of information presenting and practical activities, that's another type of hybrid. And it's basically how you would work in a face-to-face environment. Again, it's just a little bit different because the mechanics of how you're going to get together. You're not all going to be sitting around a table. You're in a breakout room instead. So think about making sure that you really, really think through your schedule. Again, shorter is better. And if you do have somebody that's on the ground where you're presenting to, it makes it a lot easier if you can work together. We found this really, really successful in the sessions that we've had today. Okay, some interactive possibilities. Now, these are just a few, and there are lots of them, and we really would love to hear what you have been using to be interactive with your audiences. So Kahoot is one that we'll talk about, and I'll give a lot more information about that. Polls is part of Zoom, and we're going to experience one of those. The interactive whiteboard is another part of Zoom that we can use. And as I said, there's others. And if you have got some ideas that you have been using or some really good activities, please put them in the chat and we will include them in the notes for everybody that we send out after this. So the example of a Kahoot quiz, this is just a little bit of fun. And what you do is you put up a question, and it's a good way to do some pre-assessment work to see if people have done the readings or have got to grips with the rules, etc. So when you're doing this, you have a type of question that you're going to, and what knowledge are you going to assess? So that's the type of question that you put into it. And then you give 4 possible answers. So you have one that's a plausible answer, as it says there, one that's a correct answer, one that's a really silly answer, and one that's incorrect. So you're going to give them a range of things. So if you were looking at you might have looked at a video and you say, what level would you give this element? You'd have a range of levels that you could give, and people choose one. And then what comes up is it tells us how many people have chosen that particular answer. And then it also says what the correct answer is. So we can also do this sort of activity with polls, and I'll show you an example, and then we're going to do one. So a couple of polls, and this is part of Zoom, and there is a very good explanation on the Virtual Toolkit website that tells you exactly how to do a poll as well. And I know that Beth is going to do just a little bit of updating to it coming up, but it's ready to go, and it will give you the basics of it. So again, as I said before, the first one talks about what final GOE would you give after you've watched a video. And for a short track one, if when they've watched the video, what infringement would be called, or what an infringement be called, sorry, during the video example. So you can have yes, no, or you can have multiple answers. And then what comes up is it'll show how many people gave a particular answer. So Elena, let's do our poll, please.
Okay, so our example for today is a question that you will see on your Zoom right now. It asks, when was the last time you have put your skates on? So you have 4 different options to answer. Now I am receiving all your answers. The options are, I skate regularly, a few months ago, over a year ago, or I don't remember. What I am seeing in the screen right now is that I have the percentage of people who have already answered the question. I see that over 80% right now. Okay, so we have almost everyone has answered the question, and I can end the poll and share the results with all of you here in Zoom. So the answer that won with 42% of participants answering was over a year ago. We haven't used our skates in over a year.
Great, thanks, Elena. So here we have an example of how quick it is to use the polling tool on Zoom, but also you can find out then from people if you're doing examples about the GOEs or an infringement in that, that really brings up a good discussion point, because there will be a variety of opinions, and then it allows you to talk about them and discuss why, and have people really think about and delve back into the reductions or the positive bullets and that, and really start to think about those things. So it really emphasizes what's going on. Okay, another one that we can use is the interactive whiteboard. And again, there are detailed instructions on how to use this on the Virtual Toolkit website. And I would strongly encourage you to go and have a look at what is available on the e-learning site for the Virtual Toolkit. But this one is an example that I've used here is when you send them out into breakout rooms, they can come back and one person can then record what it is that they were discussing. So it might be, in this case, we did some of the buzzwords for the program components. It might be that they come back and they give a range of the component marks they would give, or they might give a final GOE, or it might be that they talk about what infringements there were for speed or short track. So there's lots of different ways that you can use this, and each group has a different color, so you could actually tell which group is doing that, and have the people really talk about it and be accountable. You don't want people to go off into a breakout room, have a discussion, and then have no idea, because depending on how many breakout rooms you have, it's really hard to get around everybody. So you want to make sure that there is some accountability. And again, it generates that discussion about being able to talk about why you came up with that particular answer, and helps everybody kind of develop those different perspectives, or at least see other people's perspectives of that. Some other examples of the interactive software that you can use, and I've alluded to some of these before. So Google Docs, where you can co-author between groups of people. So it might be that you have a scenario that you put, and it might be something this for referees. You can have a scenario, and what would you do in this situation? What rules would apply, etc. And they can share that and have a discussion. There's lots of different ones out there, lots of free ones. Don't be paying for things. Dropbox and a Google Doc combo. I talked before about the Synchro Technical Committee using Dropbox to share the videos. One of the things that they could do to extend that would be to have a Google Doc document where people could put in the levels that they awarded and their reasons for that. And then suggesting using Vimeo, and this is one that Beth came through with before. Vimeo seems to be a really stable way to share videos, and much less with the lagging. And again, really looking for your suggestions about what you have used that has worked really, really well. Okay, one of the readings that we have is called The End of Boring Online PD. And what it is that you want to make your online sessions epic. And epic stands for, you want to have moments of elevation, as it says there. So you want to be able to have your little groups complete a task without frustration. So they should know exactly what it is that they have to do. They should have all the tools that they need to be able to complete that. And they should have the software or the apps that they need to be able to do that and present it back. Moments of pride. We like to be challenged, and it's a great feeling when you've had that challenge and you come through it successfully. And moments of insight. So that's really what we want to have, is we want to get that deeper understanding and that shared understanding. And we want to all go away and know that when we go to a competition, that we're on the same wavelength as, at least for our understanding of the rules and that, as everybody else is. And that moments of connection. So this is what the Virtual Toolkit and doing online webinars and that is all about. I know that we really all don't like not being able to get together in person, and this is the next best possible way of doing it. So building that community keeping our community together, keep on learning, and keep training. We owe it to our skaters, our coaches, and other officials to be the best that we possibly could be when we actually do get an opportunity to either do virtual competitions or be at a real live competition. So my take-home messages for you are, as it says there, you really want to think about your participants being at the center of your online learning. So really think about the purpose of it and how you're going to engage the audience with that. So design your webinar with your participants in mind. So really think about how much information you're going to try to get across to them. How much can they do beforehand? What follow-up tasks can they be doing as well? And sometimes seminars can go over a series of days or a series of weekends. It doesn't have to all be in one day. And remember, the biggest thing as a facilitator is that you want to have some fun too. If you're not having fun, then neither will your participants. So we'd like to open it up to some questions now. And Beth and Sally?
Yeah, Sandra, there was one question that came in, and that is about the chunking. I know you talked about chunking your sessions when you've got like an 8 or 10-hour presentation, but I also recall that you've talked about chunking even within a 50-minute session so that there's some break for the participants. I think one example you gave earlier in another session was doing something like we're doing now, where another person comes in and asks questions. So you're hearing a different voice and the situation changes a bit. Polling is another one that, you know, you're stopping the presentation and doing something else. What else do you see would be helpful for us to remember to do for chunking, and how long of chunks should we have in a 50-minute presentation before we stop, take a little break, and do something different?
Yeah, I think it depends on the purpose of your presentation. If it's just information stuff, I would try and have, like I said before, 20 minutes seems to be about maximum from what the research says about how long people can concentrate for. So if you've got a 50-minute session, you know, at least one break in the middle of it to do something. But I would, 15 minutes, do something small, like polling, and that doesn't take very long. And you can do a couple polls through it, poll at the end. But always making sure that you have a Q&A session at the end. And there's different ways of handling questions and answer sessions too. You can have it so that if you have a small group, there's a raise your hand function on Zoom, so that the facilitator can simply just ask. And that's another reason why, to make sure that you have your name up with your picture, because then at least the presenter can call you by name. If it's got something really strange, or if it's not in English, and that's the common language you use in the ISU, it makes it really difficult for the facilitator to be able to call on you.
Okay, there is another question that came in, and that was about the breakout rooms, and there was part of an answer was given on there as well. So the question was, how do you set up and manage breakout rooms? And the response on the chat here was there are instructions on the toolkit in how to do that. And there are also instructions on Zoom as well. So probably a combination of checking out the toolkit on meetings with specific directions, and also Zoom would be good. Did you talk about the raise hand function and where it is so people can do that now?
Elena, would you like to take that one?
Excuse me. Yeah, I was just looking for the link to the toolkit to share it on the chat here on Zoom and on the YouTube, so that people can access there and check it out. So what we also include in the toolkit are links to the Zoom support websites, so that we can get that mix that Bev mentioned, the instructions that we have designed for virtual events, and what Zoom shares on their website for a more technical, detailed explanation on how to set those breakout rooms.
So if anyone has any questions now, another way you can do it is in reactions. I think most of you, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you see the word reactions. It's kind of a happy face with a plus on it. And if you click on that, you should see the raise hand function. So if you have a question now that you would like to ask, we could use that, or you can just put it in the chat.
Maggie, you've got a question?
No, I was just showing you that I can actually raise my hand. I was showing off.
Well done. Anybody else?
Beth, I have something from YouTube.
Okay.
Or Sandra. Do you prepare attendees by telling them ahead of time to download an app like Kahoot, or do you wait until during the session?
No, anything that they have to do that's outside of Zoom, I would have them do beforehand. So something like Kahoot, they should have a look at it and be familiar with it ahead of time. So, because what you'll do is you'll just give them a link, but at least if they've had a look at it beforehand, they'll know that they are able to access it from their computer or their phone, whatever they're using.
Just to let you know, Sandra, on some operating systems, the reactions are different. On Mac, it's clapping hands and thumbs up. There's no raising hands.
Sorry, I've got a Mac, Chris, and it comes up at the bottom. If you click on reactions,
Yep.
It comes up at the very bottom, raise hand.
I have a comment on that.
I've only got clapping hands and thumbs up.
It depends if you're using the latest version of Zoom. So that's another advice that I will add to this webinar. When you send all the information to participants, make sure that they have the most updated version of the software you are using, because some of those features are not available if you're using a not up-to-date version.
Thanks for that, Elena. Wendy, you had a question?
Sorry, Chris, I thought they were all the same.
No.
Yeah, I do, Sandra. My question is, would you recommend putting small video clips within the presentation itself for any discussion purposes, or just do it separately because of lag time?
It just depends. Usually we found that if you were all in the same time zone, but even within New Zealand, we found that that's a problem. It's easier just to the 3-2-1 play works really, really well. And everybody sees it on, and there's no lagging at all. Please.
Got a very helpful comment that
I just want to comment on that, because we have also been doing both. And I did a seminar with the Federation this winter, and we had some videos in the presentation, and then it didn't work. And then we did the virtual competition 1 month ago, and then it was played from the YouTube, and we counted down, and that worked really nice. And especially when we did it with the technical panel training, it was really hard for the details when we put the clips into the presentation. You couldn't really see what you need to see as a tech panel.
Great, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Sorry, Chris, you had a further comment?
Yep, somebody put a really helpful guide. In some operating systems, you have to go to participants, and the raise hands in there. It's not in reactions.
Great, thank you.
But thank you, whoever said that. Thank you.
Janice, you had a question?
I was just wondering, when Jamie did his, I watched some of the examples on the the site, and he did a voiceover within his PowerPoint. Is that a simple thing to do?
It is. It takes I've been looking at some different things. There's one that you can use for Google Slides now called Mote, M-O-T-E, and that's one way of doing it. But you can do voiceover on PowerPoint as well, which works well as and certainly it is nice though for your participants to have a face, and especially depending on who it is. Like if it's people you work with all the time, it's a little bit different. But if it's people that you don't know, it's good for them to see the face as well.
Thank you.
So I'm just going through to see who else I've got hands up by. So nice to see everybody. No other questions? Any of the other group members see any questions?
It's Beth. I don't see any here on my end, so.
Great. Well, we're just about the end of time, so.
I do have a comment from the YouTube people. A few people watching there, and Charlie Sear, Ariadne Moronis, for example, and they're both saying that the YouTube production is coming across really clearly. So I just like to remind people that this will be uploaded onto the ISU YouTube development channel, so everybody can see it again.
Well, thanks everybody for attending, and I will hand it over to Beth and Elena.
Great. Thanks very much, Sandra. First of all, I'd really like to thank you for being with us today and sharing your knowledge and experience. I think one of the positives about being able to meet virtually is that we can all keep learning throughout the year, and this was definitely a good example of one of those. So thanks very much, Sandra. I'm sure we all learned some tips and strategies about how to have an engaging webinar or seminar. So that'll really help us going forward. For the webinar participants, if you have any further questions, suggestions, or even types of events that you have run or are planning to run virtually, we would really like to hear about them. So you'll see on the screen where you can send those to. So if you've got, as I say, questions, suggestions, or ideas, we really want to hear about them. We're always looking for ways to continue to improve the toolkit, and it's often been by other people that we've talked to have given us their ideas and suggestions, and that way we can really engage with all the people from the skating community to improve what we're doing. We've got a few more webinars coming up, and you can see those on the screen as well. The next one is on digital success strategies, and it's about practical solutions for setting up your equipment at home to have the best possible experience when you're doing virtual events. So that's coming up next week, and we have 5 more altogether. So before we close, I'd like to acknowledge a few people who have been instrumental in making the toolkit and webinars available. First of all, Susanna Racamo, who is the chair of the ISU Development Commission and the e-learning project group. And Susanna has been watching today on YouTube, as has Sally Rahork, who you've also seen on the screen. She was monitoring on YouTube as well. Susanna has supported the toolkit idea from the beginning, and she's been our advocate from the very, very start. I'd like to also mention Elena again. Elena, she's directing and holding everything together off screen. And from the professional staff, At the ISU, we'd like to thank Elizabeth Donnelly, she's the e-learning coordinator, Laura Shee, who's the e-learning project manager, and Selena Vanier, who's head of the media department. So thank you very much to all those people for their support, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope that we'll see you at another webinar on the toolkit. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.